Hello, my name is Agnieszka Pikulicka-Wilczewska and this is Turan Tales, a podcast about Central Asia. It delves into stories of people, politics, social change and more, and is part of my newsletter which you can support on Substack. Welcome and be my guest in the journey to Central Asia. Hi listeners! I've recently received a mail from Reporters Without Borders, an organization that I deeply respect. It was a large world map presenting RSF's newest press freedom index. Sadly, the whole of Central Asia is marked in deep red, the color category which signifies a place where press freedom is not upheld and where practicing journalism is particularly challenging. This includes authoritarian regimes where working as a journalist involves a high risk of violence, imprisonment, and censorship. This is the most serious category in the RSF index. Most Central Asian countries either remained on the same place as last year or rose up by one position. Not because the situation particularly improved, but because it got worse in other places around the world. We know that Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan are not the type of countries where freedom of press is encouraged or appreciated, so this is no news. But there is one development covered by the index that is particularly worrying. Kyrgyzstan fell by 24 places, from the 120th place out of 180 to 144th position this year, which is only 4 places higher than Uzbekistan. In demonstration of this rapid fall, towards the end of May, Kyrgyz authorities arrested 8 current and former employees of Kloop, a popular local media platform known for its investigations, which over the past 1.5 years has been mostly operating from abroad due to pressures and threats against its journalists. Kloop's video operator Alexander Alexandrov and former contributor Jumart Dulatov will remain in pre-trial detention until the 21st of July, pending further investigation. Several human rights organizations have signed a letter requesting the government to free the journalists, so far to no avail. But this is not the first time that Kyrgyzstan has gone after its journalists. In January 2024, law enforcement detained 11 current or former reporters of Temirov Live YouTube channel and charged them with inciting civil disobedience and mass unrest. Bolot Temirov, the founder of the media outlet, has lived in exile since November 2022, after the authorities stripped him of his Kyrgyzstani citizenship and expelled him from the country. 2 of the detained journalists received prison sentences of 5 and 6 years. It's almost surreal, as Kyrgyzstan for many years enjoyed the label of the island of democracy in Central Asia. So today I'm going to talk to a person who knows the Kyrgyz system inside out. Rinat Tuhvatshin, the founder of Kloop, who is currently based abroad. I have asked him about the recent arrests of Kloop collaborators, the founding of Kloop, and how the situation in Kyrgyzstan has been changing over the years. Welcome to Turan Talks. Today my guest is Rinat Tuhvatshin, who is the founder of Kloop, investigative media from Kyrgyzstan, and also currently the CTO of the company. He left Kyrgyzstan in December 2023 and has since been based in Poland, Warsaw. Hi, Rinat.
Hello.
So recently we've heard some really concerning news about Kloop's journalists and collaborators still based in Kyrgyzstan. So can you tell us how many of them are currently in detention and what charges they are facing?
There are currently 2 people in detention. One of them is our current employee, video operator, videographer, Alexander. And another one is a former employee. And they are accused of participation in inciting mass unrest.
And what is this accusation based on? Has the prosecution told you anything about, or the lawyers, do they know anything about what sort of circumstances are surrounding this accusation?
No, actually, we don't know anything. We don't think that these accusations are connected to any particular story that we published recently. I mean, when there were some press releases from security services, basically the agency that arrested our employees. I mean, they did not sound like really legalistic, but it seems that they were really mad that we worked with Bolot Timirov. It's one of the leading investigative reporters from Kyrgyzstan who has his own media and who lives now in exile, and his partner, his colleague, director of his organization, his wife, she is currently serving in prison basically on the same charges that our people are being accused of. And we do a lot of investigations together with Bolot, but people who were arrested, they did not cooperate with him directly. But from State Security Service, from their press releases, we get an impression that they were chiefly mad that we dared to work with Bolot Timirov, because it seems they consider him some kind of undesirable person, though there is no such status in Kyrgyzstan. He never was like legally pronounced. But I mean, how can you actually like pronounce him as anything? But it doesn't seem that they are attacking us because of like any one investigation. I think it's more a coordinated attack to try to destroy our media, to destroy our organization, because before that they closed one of our legal entities in Kyrgyzstan by court order, but we of course had another legal entity, so we continued our work.
We're going to get to this a little bit later, but for the moment, do we know the dates of any court cases, or your journalists or collaborators are going to be in detention for an unknown period of time for now?
Unfortunately, it's the later. Officially, there was court hearings on the length of pretrial detention, and they are in pretrial detention officially until the middle of July. But the way this works in Kyrgyzstan, they can just appoint another court hearing and prolong this pretrial detention almost indefinitely.
According to the recently published Reporters Without Borders Index, all Central Asian countries, in all Central Asian countries, the press freedom situation is very serious, which is the worst possible category. And Kyrgyzstan, in this very index, fell down by 24 places in comparison to 2024. But until very recently, Kyrgyzstan was the freest of all the Central Asian countries. So first, I would like to go back in time to the time when you set up Kloop in 2007, right? It was 2 years after the Tulip Revolution, so the first of 3 big Kyrgyz revolutions over the past 25 years. And the Tulip Revolution removed Askar Akayev from power. So can you tell us what was the political climate back in the day, and why you decided to set up Kloop?
The political climate was bad. Plus, it never was like really good, because we always try to do groundbreaking investigations, and even though in the beginning we didn't have this capacity, but we tried our best, and we always had to deal with threats from authorities. And at the time, there was this President Bakiyev in power, and there still was this state security services apparatus, and we received death threats from them, and it was especially worrying when we just published news about one of the journalists being thrown out of the window, one of Kyrgyz journalists being thrown out of the window in neighboring Kazakhstan. And when you get death threats after such incident, of course, you take them seriously. But at the time, we didn't have any capacity to do anything about it. And so we just decided to walk in pairs. But
what do you mean walk in pairs?
Not alone, basically. I mean, okay, we are getting death threats from state security services, and it seems from Bakiyev's son. What can we do about to stay safe? And they said, okay, we cannot do anything about them, but let's maybe not walk alone. So let's walk in pairs. And basically the situation was kind of similar to what we are seeing right now. It was more or less okay after the revolution, and we felt some degree of freedom, and we wanted to create a new media that would do internet online journalism that would kind of fit Western standards as we saw them, that would be very balanced, very impartial, very, very fair. So that's why we opened our media, and we realized then that we cannot find journalists that would be able to produce such journalism. So we had to teach our own, and we worked with students, we worked with school children, we opened our school. And then we saw that political climate was worsening rapidly, and then it kind of anti-climaxed when we started getting these death threats. And then a revolution happened, and it was okay for a couple of months, but
let's just remind our listeners that that was the revolution in 2010.
Yes. I think if revolution did not happen, probably it would have been the end of Kloop. Probably some of us, or all of us, would have been killed. But fortunately for us, Bakiyev had to run away from the country, and we felt some degree of freedom again. But unfortunately, then bloody events in Osh took place when there were interesting clashes in the south of the country, and we covered that, of course. And even though the government that came in power because of this revolution was more or less okay, in terms of press freedom, they had to maintain very strict security regime in the south of the country. I'm afraid there were some repressions against some ethnic groups at the time. And next year, when we came to Osh to do some trainings, we actually got detained with my co-founder, Victor Iskender, but then we were quickly let out. That was probably the one time when I was forcibly detained by security services personally. And it's funny that at the same time, I perceive this period as maybe kind of almost peak freedom in Kyrgyzstan, because after that we had this more or less fair elections. The person in power, President Otunbayeva, she left the position out of her free will, and then President Atambayev came to power. But after some years in power, the situation went downhill again. And so it's kind of like that in Kyrgyzstan, up and down, up and down.
I would like to go back to one thing that I remember we discussed a few years ago, you and me, about where the name Kloop came from. Can you tell the story?
Usually, the way I tell this story is that we could not come up with a proper name, and we had to throw darts into Biktur, and he had like letters on him, and that's how we selected these letters and then made up name out of them. But this is not entirely true.
I think you told me a different story.
Yeah, it's not true at all. The real story is that there is a short story by Russian authors Elif and Petrov. It's called Kloop, and basically it's about an organization in early Soviet Union. It's probably kind of like government organization, but nobody is sure because nobody even employees and the head of organization are not completely sure what this organization does. And there are a couple of like nosy Soviet citizens that try to investigate and spend entire day inside this organization, and they have no idea what this organization is doing. And we kind of like this idea, not to be. I mean, I think this was some kind of like a irony on the part of the authors. They were like making fun of many new organizations that appeared during early days of the Soviet Union. But for us, it was an interesting idea that you have organization that is not bound by some strict frames, very strict rules, and that people can actually change direction. So yeah, that's how we selected our name after the name of this organization that nobody knew what it was actually for.
Yeah. This is the story that you told me. I think 2 years ago or last year. Okay, so you basically also became this kind of organization that nobody knew what it was doing. In fact, because you were the first organization or the first media organization in Kyrgyzstan that was doing investigations, right? So how did it all begin? I mean, I know that you had quite a few really good investigators in your team who are, I mean, some of them are no longer with you, but where did you learn the skills? Because I think this is the main question. There wasn't a thing like that before in Kyrgyzstan. So where did you get the skills, or where did you get the people who knew how to do it?
I think there were some investigations, but I think we were one of the first organizations that started doing it like consistently, and we were starting dedicating significant portion of our resources to doing investigations. I think the first one of the first investigations that we ever did was in 2010, and it was not even an investigation, but that's how it all started. At the time, everyone was staying online, but very quietly. The president's son, Maxim Bakiev, basically acquired or took over one of the largest cell phone providers, Megacom, and but there were not a single news piece about it in like official in mainstream media. And at the same time, Maxim Bakiev was appointed as a head of basically investment agency. Basically, he became a government official.
Which year was that? Which year was that?
2010.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, okay, if he's a government official, then he's supposed to respond to media requests. And we asked him to comment on the rumors that he acquired Megacom. And we basically sent him official request for information. And we said, like, you're a government official, you're supposed to respond to media requests. And after this media request, and we published basically an article that we sent him a media request about that there are such and such rumors, but he never responded. And after that media request, we basically started getting these death threats. But it was basically the beginning, and then we continued, tried to investigate various topics. Basically, we learned by doing, but of course, OCCRP, an organization, very, very, very powerful investigative organization, it played major role in us learning how to investigate properly, how to stay safe, how to find evidence, how to present it in a proper way. And we worked a lot with them. We did a lot of investigations together. And I think most of our expertise in terms of doing investigations, it came from OCCRP.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when we were learning in creative way. For some OCCRP formats, they did not fit us or our media environment, and we adapted what we learned from them for basically Kyrgyz media environment.
And if you're going back and looking back at those times, like relatively free times, what were your like best investigations or like most impactful?
One of my most favorite ones was about, we call it Samara Gate, and that was about elections of President Jeenbekov. Basically, when Atambayev finished being president and there were presidential elections, and his protege Jeenbekov, that later betrayed Atambayev, but it's another story. And he won this election. And the funny thing about it that they had this huge campaign, and it seems that this campaign was bribing some voters. We are not 100% sure about that. But what we found out for certain that they wanted some kind of high-tech solution to manage their presidential campaign. Basically, they wanted to create a system that would help them to manage resources more effectively. And they used government servers to run the system on. And these servers, they basically held personal data of all citizens of Kyrgyzstan. It was basically like they ran on like national electronic government servers. And from the way it was built, the system was built, it was very similar to the products that at the time various government agencies used to actually manage like electronic government products. And the funniest thing was that on the day of elections, this system was basically broken into, and they lost control of it. And we were able to see, we didn't break it, of course. Someone from inside the team actually, I think, did it. But he sent us all the data, and we were able to see inside of the system. And then we partnered with organization named Curium. And together we were able to definitely prove that this whole campaign management software, it ran on very, very sensitive government servers. And it was highly technical investigation. And I think we struggled a bit to kind of explain importance of this fact to general public, but we tried our best. But I really enjoyed working with this investigation. We managed to become enemy of like two presidents, of like outgoing and incoming at once. And we received some threats from the outgoing presidents, like from him personally, and it was fun. And at the time, we realized that we needed to improve our security greatly. And another investigation that we did, it was about Matreimov, it's former deputy head of customs, and we did this investigation together with OCRP and Tazatik, and we told about how he was able to smuggle so much into Kyrgyzstan, and then he was able to transfer the money out of Kyrgyzstan, and we are talking almost like $1 billion. And unfortunately, during this investigation, our primary source was assassinated in Turkey, and we had to finish the investigation very quickly after that, using the documents that he gave us. And then there were like numerous follow-ups, both investigative and non-investigative ones. And the third one, one of my personal favorites, it was a relatively small investigation, but I liked how we approached it. We took a register of all legal entities in Kyrgyzstan. We took a database of procurement contracts, and we combined them and created a huge graph database where we could see all the connections. And we started looking for circular patterns. And basically, we were able to find numerous organizations that were somehow related to each other. For example, they had the same director, or like the directors were like relatives. And these organizations, they participated in the same procurement contracts competitions, basically to fake competition. And I think we found like literally tens or hundreds cases of such fake competition. And yeah, I really like the process of working this huge amount of data and doing graphs and like running graph search algorithms to find these patterns. But I'm a very technical person. Yes.
Well, Kloop obviously has achieved a lot, and it's important to kind of stress that these kind of investigations were really groundbreaking, and they also revealed a lot about the nature of corruption in Kyrgyzstan, not to mention the nature of the regimes that were, coming one after another. But I think that also the fact that Kloop could operate was thanks to, obviously not only the support of Western organizations that were willing to support Kloop with grants, but also the relatively free situation in Kyrgyzstan politically. Obviously, you received threats, and I'm not trying to play it down, but still the situation in Kyrgyzstan was relatively free. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that? Like, did you know what the red lines were? Or you were trying to push those red lines to kind of make this space for your activity, larger? Like, what did it look like from your perspective?
We never cared or quite frankly understood what red lines mean. We just were doing our thing, and then we let the government to react. Sometimes they reacted more violently, sometimes less, but we were just continuing doing our work. This time, reaction is probably the worst one, but it doesn't change anything. So we never kind of like thought about red lines, neither in terms of like expanding them or like not trying to overstep them. We just knew that we wanted to investigate corruption, and believe that if you investigate corruption, you need to do it at the highest levels. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And that's what we were doing. And of course, besides investigations, we were doing a lot of other fun stuff in terms of journalism.
Yeah, because apart from investigations, Kloop also has had a huge cultural significance, right, in Kyrgyzstan, because you nurtured a whole generation of journalists, investigators, photographers, and you were an important part of Bishkek's cultural landscape, right? So how do you...
I hope we still are.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm sorry to speak in the past. It's just because you moved to Warsaw, and like a large part of your team is now working from abroad. But if you look back, how do you assess this cultural impact you've had on Bishkek's life, or on Kyrgyzstan. And do you think you maybe made some mistakes along the way in your work?
I mean, of course, there are always mistakes. Probably I don't know about any significant ones, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who can point to a lot of them. But yes, I believe so. We literally taught hundreds of journalists, and I believe that even if not all of them work now as journalists, they ultimately became better citizens, people who understand how the government needs to be accountable better. And we have a lot of people who work as journalists, but also a lot of people who work in the government agencies who went through our journalism school. Also, I think we were like a little landmark when, whenever I went on a trip abroad, I tried to bring back with me some unique, some interesting person. And we showed them Kloop, and they always, I think, returned back to their country interested and inspired. And I think a lot of people really enjoyed being with us, seeing us. And I hope that they left this impression that almost all of Kyrgyzstan is like that, full of freedom, full of inspiration, doing some kind of interesting work. I remember a lot of people wanting to move to Kyrgyzstan just after visiting our office. Unfortunately, we had to close our offices long ago because there were basically vulnerabilities in terms of surveillance.
Returning back to the bad news, so do you remember a moment when it all began to crumble down? So do you remember a moment when you realized that it's no longer possible to work in Kyrgyzstan for you and your team? And what was this moment?
I believed, maybe I was a little bit naive, that if we moved all investigators out of Kyrgyzstan, if we removed all people who were doing the sensitive work, but there were still people who basically did what Kyrgyz government always asked us to do, basically cover good news, show the viewpoint of the government, because we always tried to be balanced, we always tried to be impartial, and for that we always wanted to cover what our government is saying verbatim, and for that we needed to have people in Kyrgyzstan. And I believe if we leave people on non-investigative roles, they will be able to continue their work in more or less safe environment. But then it's now a couple of weeks ago, one of our reporters said that she was detained, and we were starting doing our regular procedure to make sure that she would be safe. We were sending lawyers, looking for lawyers, sending them because it was not in the capital. And at the moment, I still kind of believe that maybe it was some kind of mistake or isolated occurrence. But then we of course had this a huge chat for all employees, and of course we were discussing this detention of our journalist. And then one of the other employees wrote that police or security services came for him as well, right in the work chat in real time. And I think that's when I realized that we will not be able to have even a single person in the country, because the government is doing systematic crackdown on our organization, and we'll have to stop our physical presence in the country completely.
Can we go back to the moment when you left? So that was December 2023. Why did you decide to leave in the end? And why Poland, out of all places?
So I decided to leave because there were like process to close down our organization, and there was a complaint to block our websites. And when we started, we were able, in the framework of the case, to close down our organization. We were able to basically look at the files that security services had on us very quickly, but still we saw that they were toying with criminal case against us, and I realized that it became too dangerous. And by leaving and taking investigative stuff with me, I hoped to maybe protect people who would be left. It worked for some time until it stopped working. Why Poland? Poland actually was not the first choice, because we always wanted to have a safe place, like a backup office in foreign country, because as I told you before, we always experienced some level of pressure, and it was kind of obvious where this regime was going. So we needed to have we had, of course, legal entity outside of the country by the time, because at one point we experienced our bank's accounts being arrested. We didn't want to have it again. But at first we decided to open an office in Ukraine. And in February 2022, we actually already almost chosen a place where we'll be renting in Kyiv. But then invasion started, and my co-founder, Viktor, he was selecting the office. He had to run to Poland. But we still wanted to cover what was going on in Ukraine. So we needed a country that would be safe and would be close to Ukraine, and would allow us to have like a base camp for reporting trips to Ukraine. And Poland was perfect. Besides, the country was not too expensive at the time, very friendly, and to journalists, to Ukrainians, we really appreciated it. And in the same time, it would probably not be too friendly to authoritarian regimes. And so that's how we chose Poland.
And ever since, many of your journalists moved to Poland. Have you managed to build like a community of, I don't know, Central Asian focused journalists, or in general, like journalists in Poland? Is there a sort of community that you can relate to in Warsaw?
No, I mean, we are a community by ourselves. We always have our students visiting, our former employees visiting. They're like all over the world and all over the Europe. But I don't think that we built a community like with other journalists. With other journalists from Central Asia in Warsaw. I'm not really actually sure that there are like a lot of other journalists from Central Asia in Warsaw. There are some, but again, I think we are kind of like a community in itself, in ourselves.
I would like to go back to Kyrgyzstan and what is happening in the country today. I think that we've in this conversation we've been quite careful in explaining, maybe using words that would be too strong. But if we look at the index that I mentioned in the beginning, so the Press Freedom Index, Kyrgyzstan fell down by 24 places in just 1 year. This is a huge fall. Do you think that, well, you mentioned earlier that around 2007, when you guys set up Kloop, the situation was similar to what it is now. But was it really? Do you think that you can compare the press freedom situation then and now? And what is the reason why Kyrgyzstan fell down so much in the ranks?
So first of all, it's not comparable to 2007. It's comparable to 2010. Mm-hmm. When Bakiyev's family, they were at their worst. And they were like literally killing people and burning bodies. And it's well documented.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we didn't see significant fall in indices at the time because the situation lasted for comparatively short time, like for several months, and then the revolution came. But like last 4 or 5 months of the regime, they were like really scary, and people got killed.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there were not, I think, so many journalist organizations. I mean, most of the mainstream media at the time, it was like TV, newspapers, and they were kind of easily controlled, I think, and easily taken over. And not so many people were jailed, in terms of journalists. But it seems that at the time for a presidential family, it was easier to kill people rather than jail them. But they were mostly focusing on like their political opponents or people they saw as traitors. But the situation was really, really scary at the time. The situation now is, of course, it is worse. Maybe not much worse. It's worse because it's longer lasting, and we see mass detention and mass arrest, not of just journalists. The problem is that anyone who even seem to oppose this government, these people, they end up in jail. And I mean, journalists, they just attract attention when they are arrested. But there's so many, we are talking about hundreds of regular social media users who get interrogated or detained or arrested or jailed just for posting any kind of criticism of the government. And when they are detained, the security services, they try to persuade them not to use lawyer, not to go to media, and they promise that they will be kind of easy on them. And they usually lie, and people end up spending years jail. And also, if you are a businessman, if you have money, you will probably end up behind the bars until you basically give part of your property to the ruling families. And yeah, the situation is bad for everyone, not just for journalists. And unfortunately, you are correctly saying that Kyrgyzstan was always the freest country in the region. But now many people are just terrified. There is literally atmosphere of terror in the country because this state security agency, it's growing, it's recruiting new people, and they are basically arresting someone basically every day.
Is it somehow related with the fact that Kyrgyzstan is forging stronger relations with Russia and the Russian security services?
Yes, I think it's 100% related. First of all, Kyrgyzstan played, unfortunately, an important role in Russian sanctions circumvention, and there is a lot of money streams that flow through the country. And of course, ruling families, ruling clans, they get a portion of this money. And it enables them to be bolder, to be stronger, because they feel support from Russia, and they, I think, feel that Russia encourages them to be more authoritarian, because I'm sure Russia doesn't want to look bad in comparison to some Kyrgyzstan. But also, I think it's much easier for Russia to control and to deal authoritarian and totalitarian leaders. They are, I think, terrified of having democratic countries on their border. I mean, if you look at the Ukrainian war, one of the reasons why this war started is because Russia doesn't want to see a prosperous democratic country compared to Russia.
On top of that, Donald Trump came back to power in the United States and cut down or dismantled the USAID, which sponsored a lot of NGOs and a lot of organizations, media in Central Asia and obviously across the world. Do you think this also will have some impact on the situation in Kyrgyzstan? And if so, what do you imagine is going to happen in Kyrgyzstan right now? Do you think it's just gonna, follow the path of Tajikistan, or maybe it's not going to be as bad?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be worse. First of all, Kloop never received money directly from USAID. Maybe some money through Internews, but not much and not directly from USAID. We were sponsored by other agencies, and we always try to have a couple of more donors. So to be maybe not if completely independent, but at least multi-dependent, and maybe be able to drop donors that would pressure us. But we never work with any donors that would pressure us in terms of editorial policies. But again, it's very complicated issue. I think USAID, it was very important factor in support of various NGOs, and I think NGOs play a vital role in democracy. But again, if you are able to open and maintain NGO, you can find money not just from USAID. And I think USAID closure, it might have negative effect, but it will be like in long term. Because USAID, they never actually pressured any government too much to be like democratic. So I don't think that they could have stopped this slide toward authoritarianism, because I think contrary to the like popular belief, US never had that much influence on governments in terms of like preserving democracy.
So what's next for Kyrgyzstan, you think, and what's next for Kloop and for your people who are now in detention?
For Kyrgyzstan, what's next? Again, so first of all, we are very still different from neighboring countries. We don't have a stable dictatorship yet. Basically, two people head the country now. It's President Japarov and head of security services Tasheev. And they try, at least on public, seem like the best friends, the best buddies. But I think at some point they will be at each other's throats, and one of them will kill the other, and then will try to build a classic dictatorship. But we'll see if it's work. Of course, also we had 3 revolutions in Kyrgyzstan, and there is no reason for another one not to happen. Unfortunately, if it happens, it's probably be extremely bloody one, and I really don't want it. I don't want people to die, but the actions of the government, it seems they are leading to like rising pressure, and you see if like protesting now, even if you protest non-violently, even if you like try to obey all laws and regulations for protest, that you're still risking to be in jail for years and years of your life. Basically, this government, it erased the border between violent and non-violent protest. Any protest is punished severely. And when mass protests erupt, not even if, but when they will be violent and they will be bloody, and it's going to be the fault of the current regime because they did not leave any room for peaceful protest. And regarding Kloop, we'll continue doing our work. We'll continue doing investigations. We are still in the same position as we were before. We still don't look for red lines. We are still journalists. We have most of our staff, and most of our staff is willing to continue working. And that's what we'll be doing. Of course, we'll have to cut down maybe on some social materials, on news, but investigative part is staying intact.
Thank you, Rinat. It was great talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And good luck to you, good luck to Kloop, and I hope that your journalists will be out of detention soon, hopefully.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Thank you, goodbye.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Turan Tales on Substack. I look forward to meeting you there and on my newsletter's social media.